The Heavenly Demon. Can't Live a Normal Life. By Sanchin. Chapter 107. At the Edge of the Cliff. Part 1. Roman Dmitri was a name they had heard for too long. Count Fabius welcomed Roman earlier than the others. Welcome. The fame of Mr. Roman Dmitri is well known. It is truly an honor to meet the hero of Cairo who defeated the Hector kingdom. He smiled. The other two nobles who heard that immediately came forward and showed aggressive reactions like hugging Roman. You are much taller than the rumors. That's true. You are certainly too handsome, and for a moment, I thought I was lost in your beauty. The atmosphere was friendly. It might seem like it was pretty enjoyable from afar, but the three nobles were making sure that they would not be pushed back by each other. Their goals were clear as crystal. The nobles of the central government of Cairo, who should have been resting in their mansions, had come down to the war zone. The southern front can be ignored. The most important thing is to bring Roman Dmitri on our side. Even if Cairo loses to the Hector kingdom, it will be the responsibility of the royal family, but if Roman Dmitri is taken away by the other nobles, the balance of power will be destroyed. He is someone who wasn't pushed back even against a 5-star or a swordsman. We must recruit him through any means. A special order had been given. Count Fabius glanced at Roman. It wasn't to exchange simple words. He had no idea that Roman Dmitri would show such progress even though he was this young. Roman Dmitri is only in his mid-20s. Moreover, he is the eldest son of the Dmitri family, which is known to be the absolute powerhouse of the northeast region of Cairo. Although it is disturbing that he comes from a family that was originally commoners, he isn't someone who is lacking when compared to the other nobles in the central government. And if I recruit him, Marquis Benedict will use me more in the future and know of my importance. This time, as well, it was Count Fabius who had got the lead. Please sit here. Thank you. You might not know, but I am serving Marquis Benedict. I heard that Marquis Benedict knows you quite well, so he directly contacted others to position you on the southern front. He had no idea that a war would happen back then, so he asked me to convey an apology for that. It's okay. I knew that it wasn't intentional. Haha. Is that so? When he heard that Roman didn't think of it as a huge deal, he smiled. Nevertheless, Marquis Benedict feels bad about what happened. Please set aside some time in the future. He sent a special gift for you to use in case you are in danger. You are the star who will shine up the entire Cairo kingdom, so he doesn't want you to get hurt in such a place. This meeting didn't have a clear subject. They should have been discussing how to defeat the Hector kingdom, but Count Fabius didn't seem interested in that. The other nobles were no different. Seeing Count Fabius openly expressing his greed, they also added their words. I hope you contact Count Gregory once. I am sure it will be very useful for Mr. Roman Dmitri. Count Denver has sent the knights of his family. They will obey Roman Dmitri's orders and are ready to sacrifice their lives for you. Please put them to good use. He doesn't want anything in return. This is just a small favor. They weren't even hiding their purpose. They took out all the cards they had prepared in advance to win the favor of Roman. Nevertheless, contrary to their expectations of Roman being glad, his expression only turned stiff as he continued to listen to them. What are you all doing right now? Those people still hadn't figured out what kind of person Roman was. At the same time, Roman had never hidden himself. He showed his presence openly, and everyone always rushed to him with their pockets open and showing their greed. Nevertheless, to Roman, the 4 forces were just 4 things to use. It wasn't bad. He intended to use the interests of those in power to buy time and grow, but still, people had to choose a time and place for things. Roman said, I am not so naive that I don't know why you all came to me. Marquis Benedict, Count Gregory, and Count Denver, everyone came to me asking to swear allegiance to them, and I made sure to convey that I won't make that decision anytime soon. Loyalty can only be given to one person, and the one who swears. Loyalty must put their life on the line. Thus, for myself, I need to be careful. A favor is something to be grateful for and not at the same time. The enemies who attacked Cairo are right ahead. They are waiting to firmly put their flag on Cairo's territory, and I do not think it is appropriate for me to discuss my future in such a place. Roman wasn't going to go round and round. He intentionally showed them that he wasn't like that. He knew that his words would rather ignite the desires of others. They all brought the competition to the surface and made it clear that they are worried. The fact that I am a person who doesn't make a choice immediately will make them sad. Nevertheless, even if I keep a distance from the four forces, they will not give up on me. And if I tell them that I will make a decision in the near future, they will have to wait, no matter how they feel. The stage was in his hands. To the confused novels, he said, by fighting this war, I came to know that I am a frog in a well. Therefore, after defeating the Hector kingdom, I plan to challenge the rankings and become the best in Cairo. Wait until then. I will prove myself and then offer my sword to one person. The best swordsman in Cairo was an attractive card. When the nobles heard those words, they all had gleaming eyes. No one spoke hastily. Roman told them to not talk about it, so they all were thinking about how to report back to their lords. So, swish. Roman unfolded the map. He pointed at it, looked at their faces, and asked, why don't we focus on the situation in front of us? Things were sorted out. The fierce competition was put on hold for a while. When they heard Roman's suggestion, they devised a way to attack the Hector kingdom earnestly. According to what Mr. Roman Dmitri warned us of, we must capture the rear within 3 days. So, why is there a need to think of complicated stuff? There is a simple method. We will destroy the war with a flare, put a ladder to climb, and move forward. The number of troops the Hector kingdom has is around 10,000. As we have brought in these many forces, we have a good chance of winning against them in a head-on battle, said Count Fabius. It was quite a simple strategy and had no problems. Then, Baron Brahim said, I do not deny that pushing in head first is a bad method. However, the damage to our allies will be huge if we do that. The Hector kingdom must have prepared flares, as well, and the war is against quite a number of enemies while we have a small number of allies on our side. If they start a siege, instead of ending it in 3 days, we will be handing them victory on a silver platter. I have the same thoughts. We need a better strategy and not a simple, well-known method. The opinions were divided, and there was no clear solution in sight. Finally, everyone began to think of a method to win the battle of capturing the forts back. Nevertheless, no matter how much they thought, they could not come up with a way of breaking down the walls and defeating 10,000 enemies without taking damage. It was a battle where damage was inevitable. Nevertheless, they hoped to find an ingenious solution by making use of the strategy meeting, but as the meeting progressed, the opinions, in the end, started to support the first one. Count Fabius asked, what does Mr. Roman Dmitri think? At that moment, Ivan looked at him with anticipation. He was a warrior who had defeated 10,000 troops with a mere 200 troops. They thought that if it was Roman Dmitri, he might have a different solution from theirs. My opinion isn't much different. The rear fort was originally the last wall of the southern front, and from the moment it got taken away, a long battle was unavoidable. And after 3 days, the enemy will create a variety of variables through the warp gate. Are you saying there is no other way? They all looked disappointed. As the expectations for Roman had risen to the highest, they were not met through a simple answer. Nevertheless, as he said, this wasn't a great situation. However, it isn't like there is no way. There are 2 ways to end this war quickly. The important point in this strategy is people. I cannot be sure that the strategy will work, but I think it is worth a try if an all-out war is unavoidable. Roman soon began his explanation. The nobles, who looked suspicious at first, were soon completely absorbed in his plan. Bong! Bong! That was the sound of war. As the soldiers of the Hector kingdom heard that the Cairo kingdom had moved its troops, they all went up the wall. Stay in your positions. Enemies are coming. They could see the flag of Cairo far away. The appearance of enemies rushing in like a wave was odd, but the soldiers of the Hector kingdom didn't show signs of fear. They had a duty to get food and return to their families. That weight suppressed their fear, and they also believed that in a siege battle, it was advantageous for them to defend. Chuck. They all arranged themselves on the wall. The archers pulled the arrows back and were ready to attack with their hands on the bowstrings. Wait. Edwin Hector raised his hand. The enemies were not yet in range. Firing arrows from this far was pointless, and he waited for the time when their faces could be seen. Just then, he saw something strange happening in front of his eyes. The soldiers of the Cairo kingdom split into two sides. And then, instead of a magical weapon like a flare, a certain person stepped forward. What is this? At first, he thought the situation was weird. A single person? The moment he thought that Cairo might be trying to convey a message, he saw the person's face. Roman Dmitri. At that moment, his expression became as cold as ice. Roman Dmitri had left a great impression on Edwin Hector. He was a being who had slaughtered 700 of his soldiers overnight, and even had aimed for his own life, but wasn't able to take it thanks to Butler. His senses were tingling. He didn't know why Roman had come forward, but as soon as he came within range, he was planning to attack him with a sea of arrows. Step. Step. Roman's face brightened. When he saw the enemies raising their mana and preparing to attack, Roman exclaimed loudly, I am Roman Dmitri of the Cairo kingdom. I, Roman Dmitri, as a warrior representing the Cairo kingdom, request a duel with Butler of the Hector kingdom. Clench. Everyone went stiff. His words were a shock even for the Hector kingdom. Chapter 108. At the Edge of the Cliff. Part 2. An hour ago, Roman looked at the nobles and told them of the first way to end the war quickly. The Hector kingdom needs time. Whether they use the warp gate to bring in allies for support or the Kronos Empire, they need at least 3 days to get it to function properly. Therefore, there is no reason for us to overdo things. It will be more likely that they will only be able to counter our attacks and not create any variables if we fight to our fullest. The enemy troops were hiding inside the walls. Pulling out the enemy was one way if the high and hard walls couldn't be destroyed that soon. The first way is to create a variable. As a warrior, I will apply for a duel with the Hector kingdom. That is reckless. They have Butler on their side. He will surely be the one to come as a warrior, and that will complicate the situation. The reaction of the nobles was negative. Who was Butler? He was the captain of the Royal Knights of Hector. He had defeated countless enemies with his fairly systematic swordsmanship, and thanks to his explosive 5-star aura, Butler, a commoner, was allowed to have the honor of becoming a royal knight based solely on skill. Now that he was getting older, he was refraining from taking on outside activities, but Butler was still one of the most recognized names on the Salamander continent. The opponent was obvious if Roman were to offer to have a battle of great warriors. Count Fabius said, I am not saying Mr. Roman Dmitri isn't strong. It was natural that no one would ignore your achievements from the time you defeated Hector's troops with just 200 troops on your side. Nevertheless, isn't the opponent Butler? The battle of great warriors is a double-edged sword. When you win and gain momentum, you can take down the opponent at once, but even a single loss can lead to destruction. That's correct. The opponent is none other than Butler. How the hell will you beat a 5-star or a swordsman? I understand your intention, but I do not want to take unnecessary risks. The nobles' opinions were the same. In order to not lose the talented Roman Dmitri, the three nobles had come together for the first time. When he saw their reaction, Roman grinned. I am even more sure that the first way is the best because of the reactions you all just showed. The Hector kingdom is no different from you all. As they will be sure that Butler will win the fight, they will forget about everything and accept my offer. That is the beginning of the variable. This operation wouldn't end with a simple proposal of fighting. Roman Dmitri suppressed the opposition of nobles when he said persuasively, "Trust me. The moment I defeat Butler, Hector's strong walls will crack open." When they heard the suggestion Roman had given just a few seconds ago, all the troops of the Hector kingdom were stunned. When he saw that the answer didn't come back immediately, Roman raised his voice and said, "We have no grudges against each other. No, to be precise, we could say that we were unilaterally damaged because of Hector's purpose. Nevertheless, that is not an important issue. I hope that there will be no more meaningless blood spilled, and that is why I want to end this war completely with a battle of great warriors." As the carrots were out, the Hector kingdom had no choice but to be attracted by their smell. Roman struck the final blow by saying out loud the reward they wanted. "If you win this battle, we will graciously accept the proposal of the Hector kingdom. In return for the southern front, we will pay you as much compensation as you want. Conversely, when I win, you have to lead the southern front. That is the only condition I want. We have already made the decision on our side, and if you accept the proposal, we will accept the outcome, no matter what." Whisper. Both sides were a mess. It was a radical proposal to put an end to the war, and the aftermath of it was bound to spread around. Butler. He was the second-ranked Aura swordsman of Hector and was quite a strong opponent. Obviously, Roman's growth was monstrous, but he wasn't at a level where he could deal with a 5-star Aura swordsman yet. The short battle in the mountains showed how strong Butler was. He was an opponent against whom victory was never confirmed, but for that reason, they had a strong sense of victory. It is well worth risking your life for the battle. The life of a fighter was never one of comfort. They had to fight constantly, and if they found an existence stronger than them, then they had no choice but to fight it. Heavenly demon Baek Jung-hyuk, the peak of the demonic sect, lived on that desire. If Baek Jung-hyuk was someone who would settle down and live a comfortable life, he wouldn't have thought of crushing the head of the captain with a stone when he fell into the cave. By bowing the head, one doesn't have to take risks but has to throw away their pride. In a situation where he could normally live like everyone else, Baek Jung-hyuk was always one step ahead. The current situation was no different. If Butler was a strong person, he had to surpass him. He would trample on him and prove his strength once again. Roman exclaimed, "I know what you are thinking. Now that the negotiations with the Cairo kingdom have broken down, you all are most likely trying to bring in outside forces to solve the problem. As the Kronos Empire is aiming for Cairo, they see the southern front as a bonus. However, sufficient time is needed to connect the warp gate. If you don't accept my offer, even at the risk of damage, I will destroy the rear of the southern front. I will slaughter all those who dared to invade Cairo's territory and torture any survivor until they beg for death." Roman cornered them with another blow. By announcing Cairo's two options in advance, he told them what the cost of their choice would be. "I will give you exactly 10 minutes. I hope you will make a wise decision." Roman then stepped back. There was no need for him to rush things anymore. From now on, it was Hector's turn to choose. The soldiers of Hector who were above the wall mumbled among each other. They had vowed to resist with all their lives, but they all saw one person as a possibility for their survival. That person was Butler. Butler approached Edwin Hector in front of everyone and said, "I will fight." Not aloud. "Commander, Roman Dmitri already understands our intentions. Now that the fact that you are trying to make a deal with the Kronos Empire has been discovered, we don't know what will happen. Trust me, just this once. I will behead Roman Dmitri and return to find a way for the Hector kingdom to live." His confident voice proved that he would not be pushed back. He truly was ready to put his life on the life, and Roman's offer seemed irresistible to everyone. Nevertheless, Edwin Hector shook his head. "It isn't that I don't trust you. You are the captain of the Royal Knights of Hector. Butler. Obviously, I think that you can defeat Roman Dmitri with your skills. The problem is that you, I, and everyone else in the room know that. The Roman Dmitri we experienced isn't a reckless kid. We cannot dare to look into the depth of the abyss he is. We lost 700 men due to him and his actions in one night. He asked to fight because he was sure of winning. I don't think he can bring you down with his skills, but Roman Dmitri surely has a plan in his mind. And Edwin didn't yet understand what Roman's plan was. Nevertheless, he didn't want to relive the defeat he had faced against Roman earlier. Even though a certain victory was right in front of him, because of that one defeat, Edwin didn't want to push his luck. Butler said, "Commander, no, Prince. After I joined the Royal Knights, I lived with the Prince all my life. What kind of person does the Prince remember me as? Was I a coward who stepped back in fear at the possibility of defeat and didn't even try? Because I was worried about the trap of an opponent? That fact that Roman Dmitri has plans is expected. Nevertheless, I am the captain of the Royal Knights. The Roman Dmitri I experienced was one step below me, and I am confident in shattering him." He knelt down on one knee and appealed to Edwin with a hot and persuasive voice. When he saw that passion, Edwin became speechless. Butler was right. Despite being old, in his best days, he was more warlike than any other person. He had gone through countless challenges and passed through countless risks of death. By overcoming them, he became Butler, a 5-star Aura swordsman, and made a name for himself throughout the entire continent. Roman Dmitri can never beat Butler with his current skills. If so, their only option is to dig a trap to defeat Butler. If such a thing happens, the Hector Kingdom will have an actual cause for war. We can create any stage we want to because of the enemy's cowardice. Edwin's head started to hurt. A musty smell lingered at the tip of his nose. He couldn't speak when he recalled the moment when he had cremated the soldiers. Nevertheless, just as Butler was precious to him, the Hector Kingdom was also precious to him, and he had already decided to save Hector. Edwin Hector said, "Promise me one thing." "Please say it." "If you notice any strange signs, run away right that instant. I do not want to lose you. Can you promise me this one thing?" "I understand, my prince." Butler stood up and covered the sun. Then, with unfaltering eyes, Hector's giant spoke in front of everyone. "Then, I will go and come back with a victory." Creak! The gate opened. Everyone became silent when they saw Butler walking forward. With each step, Butler got closer to Roman. When he finally reached a distance where it wouldn't be strange to attack, Butler said, "I have seen a lot of crazy people in my life, but never one as crazy as you. I will tell you in advance that I will do my best. I don't know what trap you have prepared, but if you came out with good intentions, turn back. If you do that, your life will be spared." Shoo! He then drew his sword. Surprisingly, even though he hadn't taken a stance yet, it was pressuring. Roman smiled. "I will tell you one thing. Diligent justifications aren't really that important to me. The moment I met you and your sword on the mountain, I hoped to see you fight till the end. At that time, the situation wasn't good, and I had to step back, but now, I have created a stage where we will not be disturbed." He had seen a lot of people of the Hector Kingdom talking about his offer. They must have concluded that there were traps, and it must have been difficult for them to come out since they had already fallen into a trap once. Nevertheless, this time, there were no traps from the beginning. "The one sword I have is everything. There is no need for something like a trap. I only want to have a fight against you. So, do your best. If you kill me here, you can get what you want." At that moment, Butler grinned. He had expected something like that, but Roman somehow always seemed to exceed his expectations. Crazy bastard. No more words were needed. No matter who arrived first. Step. Step. They both ran toward each other frenziedly. Chapter 109. At the Edge of the Cliff. Part 3. People said that from the time one reached the 5-star Aura level, they had strength that could be discussed on the entire continent, and they could change the tide of battle by themselves. Quang. Rumble. Butler's aura exploded frenziedly. This fight wasn't a flashy one for honor. The fate of the entire Hector kingdom was at stake, and Butler had no intention of prolonging the fight. All the nobles of Cairo looked with wide eyes at the attacks that were raising up sparks in the air. Even if Roman Dmitri was stronger than what the rumors said, they didn't think that he could stop Butler. Nevertheless, Quang, Quaquang. Roman and Butler swords collided. The aura that seemed to devour Roman at any moment couldn't get past his sword, and when their swords clashed, a powerful shockwave swept around the entire battlefield. For a moment, even Butler couldn't hide his surprise. Roman Dmitri was, at best, a 4-star aura swordsman, but he showed absurd ability when it came to blocking aura. It was an unexpected situation. Nevertheless, he put his doubts aside. Even if Roman was stronger than he had expected, he still had an advantage in a battle of strength and power. It'll be over at once. Rumble. His aura exploded once again. Butler didn't care about the defense of his opponent. If his head-on attack got blocked, he would take a step forward and attack him from the right side, and if Roman turned to block the attack on the right side, he would attack him from the other side. The attacks were so fast that it was hard to see them with the naked eye. The mana in the body constantly circulated and gave Butler explosive power whenever he made a move. Tap. His thighs swelled greatly. As Roman saw him exploding his aura and slamming the ground, the space in his field of view looked like it was being folded. Quang. Rumble. Butler had certainly lived up to his name, and he certainly didn't have a title that was all about fame. It was an achievement he had gained after living as a swordsman for several decades, and when he reached the level of 5-star, the people of Hector recognized him as the Sword of Hector. Ordinary swordsmen felt suffocated just from watching him. Roman was pushed back by the storm-like attack, and before he even realized it, wounds appeared on his body, one after another. Pat. Blood splattered in the air. Even though the sword had only scratched him, his skin, which was protected with aura, was torn as if it was paper. Yet, Roman didn't even frown. Rather, the nobles of Cairo were the ones losing it. Isn't this how we lose? Roman had shown absolute confidence and asked them to believe in him when he told them of his plan. They all had thought that Roman could not defeat Butler, but they still nodded. Actually, just being able to withstand Butler's attacks was amazing. That affirmed the fact that Roman had a talent that would make him famous throughout the entire continent in the future, but that future was meaningless if Butler's sword blew his head off here. Flash. Butler's sword vanished before their eyes. After steadily driving him into the corner, he aimed for the blind spot of his opponent. Quang. Rumble. The speed of Roman's reaction was marvelous. Everyone had thought that the attack would really work this time, but, this time as well, Roman Dmitri had managed to block Butler's attack. After that attack, doubts began to rise within him. He was clearly convinced that he would win this fight. The repulsive force that was transmitted from the sword wasn't bad, and it was evident that Roman Dmitri was struggling to defend his attacks from his movements. Nevertheless, the more they exchanged blows, the more the situation changed. It is getting faster. In the beginning, after blocking his attack, he would aim to block the next attack again. However, now that Butler was pushing him even more strongly than before, Roman's defense was getting even faster. Bang! Bang! It was fast. Nevertheless, no matter how Butler attacked him, Roman still responded. Him being able to block his 5-star aura was not everything. When Butler looked into the eyes of Roman, he felt goosebumps rise on his body. Finally, he realized where his doubts began to come from. Is he slowly adapting and searching for gaps in my sword technique? That was correct. Even against a 5-star aura swordsman, Roman Dmitri was not doing his best. Butler was strong. He had strength that couldn't be handled by someone who had only trained for half a year. It was the first time Roman felt like he was being pushed back in a battle of strength and power. Finally, he saw a new mountain in this world. He had slashed Homer, who was a 4-star aura swordsman, yet no one trusted him to win against Butler, who was a 5-star aura swordsman. He had met a wall and an opponent he could look up at. He was certain that he could surpass Butler over time, but because he had met him now, Roman's love for victory began to rise up again. I will be able to go one step further if I take down Butler here. He risked his life. The aura that was getting closer to his body, Quang. Rumble. Had tremendous power. It was normal for attacks that distorted the space to not be stopped unless one was on the same level as that of the opponent, but strangely, Roman's aura still did not disappear when he faced such an attack. It was something that people like Butler could never understand. They believed and followed the way of using aura everyone else did, but Roman had realized that there was a fatal flaw in that way of using aura. Aura explosion, the indiscriminate usage of chi, has a clear weakness. Roman's world was different. These so-called aura swordsmen didn't deal with mana carefully but always exploded them out. It was a reckless method of throwing power. Although it was a method that could be used to unleash an explosion instantly, the power that exploded in all directions could not strengthen the parts of the sword uniformly. It was a simple theory. In Murim, the condensed power could inflict a certain shock in any situation, but in Roman's world, the impact was different for each hit. If Butler's sword was showing 120% of the aura that he had, it only had 80% of the power. That was Roman's goal. Although he hadn't reached a point where he could win against him head-on, he read the flow of mana and attacked the weak spot. Precisely. Quang. Quakwang. Auras clashed. It was a close encounter that was unbelievable even when one saw them with the naked eye. It was never easy to grasp the ever-changing eruption of aura and attack the weak spot, but Roman's incredible senses made such nonsense a reality. That was why he was taking time to adapt to Butler's sword technique. He read the pattern when his opponent attacked and recalled the imaginary battles he had in his head. In the imaginary world, he had died countless times to Butler. Butler, who appeared in reality, was a stronger being than him, but the possibilities he had thought of in his head helped him read the future. Swish! He aimed for his head. It was a direct flank attack. It was a pattern that he had seen only once while fighting in the mountains, but Roman had a clear memory of how that attack worked. It wasn't just that. He even thought of the various attacks that could come out after that. Even though Butler hadn't shown him any such attacks yet, the simulation he had run earlier in his head was helping him grasp the intentions of Butler. The life of Heavenly Demon Baek Junhyuk was not smooth. He had met enemies much stronger than Butler, but he had always managed to win in his own way. The current situation was no different. The analysis is finished. His movements changed instantly. He dug into his opponent's arms, and as Butler retrieved his sword and raised an aura, Roman's eyes caught on to an area that had much less aura. Heavenly Demon Sword Technique, third move. Quakwang. Rumble. He did his best in that one attack. The mana in his dantian exploded. Butler, who naturally thought that he could stop Roman's attack, let the auras collide, and his expression changed instantly. He had felt a huge shock all over his body. It felt like his insides were twisting, and as soon as he showed a slight tilt in balance, Roman did not miss. Quang. Quakwang. It was an overwhelming attack. It was only a small mistake, yet as soon as Roman Dmitri had caught on to that, he did not allow him even the slightest leeway. Butler felt like he was being choked. He was busy blocking the attack hurriedly, and as the aura was uneven, Roman took advantage of the gap and attacked him once again. Butler, a 5-star aura swordsman, was now being pushed back. When they saw Roman pushing him back, the people on both sides were more shocked than surprised. It was because that made no sense. It was far beyond their common sense for Roman Dmitri, a man in his mid-20s, to push Butler back. And at that moment, Butler's patience reached its limit. Butler thought, this guy is really fucking crazy. Before he had accepted the Battle of Great Warriors, Edwin Hector had said that there would be a trap. It was because he thought that Roman Dmitri could not win head-on, so he assumed there would be a plan he was hiding. Nevertheless, the reality was different. Roman did not seriously prepare any traps. He showed his intention to defeat his opponent purely by force, and in reality, that pressure made Butler shake. It was quite disappointing. Butler had faced numerous swordsmen in his life. Some of them were called geniuses, but Butler was equally gifted. In his decades of experience, the presence of Roman Dmitri felt overwhelming. Not just that, he also admired the boldness of Roman competing even in situations where the pressure was so bad. We prepared for a year to attack the Cairo kingdom. The plan that was supposed to be perfect started to go awry because such a nonsensical existence was there on the southern front. As long as Roman Dmitri lives and breathes, we cannot achieve our goals. If I let Roman Dmitri continue to live like this, he will become a monster that the Hector kingdom will never be able to handle. Butler acknowledged his opponent. Even when he was in his 20s, he wasn't like this. Not only did he not possess as great an ability as Roman when he was in his 20s, but he also wasn't brave enough to risk his life even when he knew the opponent was far stronger than him. To be precise, it was hard to show courage in a world of common sense. Butler had obviously lived the life of a fighter, but he was nothing when compared to Roman Dmitri standing in front of him. Therefore, I have to kill Roman Dmitri right here. It did not change the fact that he was currently stronger than Roman. Roman was certainly showing skills that were amazing, but Butler felt confident when they exchanged blows. He was stronger, and he exploded his aura. He completely used his mana to push the opponent to one side. Quang. Quakwang. There was no way to stop it. It was an extreme aura eruption. As he was now exerting everything there was in his body, Roman decided to avoid his attacks with movement rather than blocking them head-on. It was quite a clever move, and he was moving quickly with no hesitation. Nonetheless, at that moment, Butler bet the odds. If you accept this, I will admit that you are equal to me. He prepared one attack. It was his ultimate attack. The mana in his body was boiling wildly and moving frantically. It soon erupted like an active volcano, and as it was concentrated in only one place, it soared high enough to touch the sky and filled Roman's entire vision. While Butler was traveling throughout the continent, there were only two people who were able to stop this attack. The first one was the first sword of the Hector kingdom. And the other one was one who had climbed the continent rankings. Butler was currently using such an attack on Roman. It is the end now. Rumble. Quack-quack-wang. The attack headed for Roman Dmitri without caring about anything else, and as the sun was setting, the exploding aura engulfed Roman Dmitri's entire existence at once. Chapter 110. At the Edge of the Cliff. Part 4. The soldiers above the wall were cheering when they saw Butler pushing back Roman right from the very start. Woa! Butler! Butler! Please avenge our comrades. Roman Dmitri was a name that made their bones tremble. His appearance under the sun reminded them of the death of their comrades, and Hector's soldiers stood close to the wall with eyes glistening for blood. They didn't have the slightest doubt about Butler's victory. To them, Butler was a symbol of trust. And they believed that even a strong opponent would not be able to defeat Butler. However, at some point, the atmosphere began to change. As Roman started to gain momentum slowly, the walls that were full of cheers soon cooled down as if someone had poured cold water on them. Does this make sense? Roman Dmitri is a 3-star aura swordsman. How the heck is he competing on equal footing with a 5-star one? Someone, please explain this situation to me. Like that person, the shock soon spread to everyone like wildfire. Edwin Hector was no different. No, from the moment he saw Roman Dmitri blocking the attacks of 5-star aura, he couldn't control his expression. Was he seriously trying to fight with only his skills? His eyes trembled. Common sense said that battle was clearly unfavorable to Roman. Everyone knew the difference in their status and power, and that was why they were sure Butler would win. That was why they all thought Roman had set up a trap. They couldn't think of any way in which Roman defeated Butler normally, and as soon as Roman received the attack with his sword, he suspected Roman might have used magic to enchant his sword. However, that wasn't it. As Edwin Hector was himself a magician, he understood that the opponent hadn't used any tricks. From that point onward, his heart began to pound wildly. His mouth became dry, and he remembered the moment he had first met Roman when he had appeared from the darkness. There can be nothing worse than Butler losing to Roman Dmitri. Not only will we lose our most powerful person, but we will have to retreat from the rear position because of defeat. Nevertheless, regardless of victory or defeat, we cannot follow the outcome of the fight. If the war is lost despite putting in such a huge amount of manpower and materials, that will mean the downfall of Hector, and the reputation of the Hector kingdom will fall in the eyes of other nations. He shook his head. He trusted Butler. Butler hadn't done his best yet. An ominous feeling continued to creep in, but he tried to believe that the winner was, in the end, going to be Butler. And as if to live up to that belief, Quang! Quakwang! The tide of the battle changed again. Butler pushed Roman back with aura swirling around his sword and touching the sky. This is the end. He was convinced there was no way Roman could stop this. Even men stronger than him on the continent had fallen down because of this attack, but at that moment, rumble! Quakwang! Edwin Hector had no choice but to widen his eyes when he saw the situation in front of him. Before thrusting his sons down the cave, Baek Jung-hyuk's father had his 12 sons seated in front of him and said, "The existence of a heavenly demon is a symbol of blind trust. You must not show any weakness at any moment. It is right to give up your life rather than take a step back. You must overwhelmingly win against your enemy rather than be satisfied with a humble victory. Keep this in mind. The title of the heavenly demon is only given to the absolute strongest person. If you truly want to follow me and be at the apex of the sect, you should have no shame in taking those steps." That day, the swords of the heavenly demon were shocked by his words. Nevertheless, his sons naturally obeyed the orders of their father. Rather than learning a defensive technique, they did their best to press the opponent with an aggressive one. Obviously, there were those who couldn't avoid death in the process. As their father had said, they pushed in with everything, but that also led to heads being blown away and the talents of the demonic sect, which had developed a little, vanishing. Nevertheless, there was one who was different. Despite showing the most aggressive moves, Baek Jung-hyuk didn't neglect to learn the defense techniques. The meaning of what my father said about attacking is when one is solely focused on attacking. To become someone strong, one has to be perfect in both defense and offense. We must push the enemy with overwhelming force but always be able to block them too. Only when one grows into such an existence can they become the heavenly demon. The sun was setting in front of him, but the moment the blazing aura filled his vision, Roman understood there was no chance he could win in a head-to-head fight. Is this an ultimate attack? Even then, if he had only been allowed half a year to train and use the mid-moves of the heavenly demon sword technique, he would have responded to the battle of strength and power without hesitation. Nevertheless, that wasn't the case now. If he had the same skills as his previous life, he could blow off Butler's head at any given moment. Nonetheless, that wasn't the case now. If he believed that he had the same skills, he would be the one whose head would be blown away. Therefore, he changed his attitude. He completely excluded his aggressive elements and focused solely on defense. He manifested his aura. Heavenly Demon Sword. Technique was the most powerful technique he had. However, the iron ingot was the strongest shield that Baek Jung-hyuk possessed. Iron ingot. Rumble. Quack-quack-wang. His aura exploded intensely. Against the powerful force that seemed to completely want to devour his entire existence, Roman condensed his aura to the highest limit and pushed himself forward to block the attack by making a gap in it. His arms trembled at the tremendous force of the attack. Blood dripped out of his mouth, but the strong power of iron ingot wasn't pushed back in the slightest. And at that moment, Butler and Roman's met in the air. Butler's eyes, which were confident of victory, were now stained with shock, unable to accept the reality in front of him. A single defense technique had completely shattered Butler's common sense. Any sword technique valued harmony. Defending didn't only mean defending, but it meant distributing the chi correctly in the body and making sure that one was ready to counterattack when given the opportunity. Nevertheless, the iron ingot excluded that. Rather, one had to switch from a defense form to an attack form when countering while using iron ingot. Even the power around Roman was being immersed in defense, and if Butler had continued to push, he would have continued to stay focused on defense alone. The time of transitioning from defense to attack was required to be fast. In a battle between warriors, even a fleeting time was fatal, but Butler made the mistake of wasting that time. How? He was shocked. This didn't make sense. He couldn't understand how Roman Dmitri had stopped his ultimate attack that even a 5-star or a swordman would have failed to. And in the short time he expressed his feelings, Roman stabilized himself. He used mana to support Iron Ingot's defense while simultaneously changing his stance and redistributing the mana in the muscles that were solely focused on defense. In a situation where everyone was sure no type of defense could stop Butler's attack, they weren't even sure what was happening when Roman blocked him. In reality, it was just a fleeting moment, and Roman didn't miss the change in the situation. Tap. He kicked the ground wildly. He attacked Butler with everything he had for the first time. His mana exploded aggressively as if it was erupting from an active volcano, and Butler was pushed back without even being able to catch his breath. Quang. Quakwang. The reaction strength of Butler was weak. Obviously, there was a huge difference between Roman and Butler. However, Butler had now exhausted his strength because of relentless attacks and Roman's perfect defense. Noticeably, his aura had become weak now. When he had enough mana, he displayed strong explosive strength, but he was now showing heavy expressions while only countering Roman's attacks. Nevertheless, Roman was different. His martial arts consisted of techniques that exerted extreme power without even using that much power. The one who was dominant in the battle was now Roman. He relentlessly attacked Butler and moved fiercely as if he was going to end Butler right now, and Butler could only clench his teeth and try to counter Roman. Hook! Butler's sword flew past right in front of him. Yet, Roman's eyes didn't waver. Instead of stepping back and countering, in order to not slow down his momentum, he stepped forward and continued his attacks. Butler's heart sank to the bottom. He couldn't have known that in order to rise to the throne of Heavenly Demon, Baek Jung-hyuk had to be more aggressive than anyone else, and from now on, he was in the world of Baek Jung-hyuk. He was a person who was accustomed to being overwhelmed. Butler's complexion gradually began to turn pale as he was getting pushed back, and he exploded his aura while grasping for straws. If it defended him against the attacks, that was good, and if he managed to counterattack, that was good as well. Roman stepped forward fiercely. It seemed like he wasn't afraid of losing his life, and even if Butler's sword was on his neck, he wasn't going to allow him any leeway. Butler felt out of breath and became dizzy. He had used a lot of strength in his ultimate attack. Nevertheless, he wasn't getting any time to stabilize his breathing. The moment when Butler began to struggle with a pale face, Roman's eyes turned cold. This is the end. At that moment, Quack. Butler chose to take Roman Dmitri down with him. It was the end. Butler knew that a lot better than the others. Roman Dmitri was a beast, and it was clear that he would never miss the chance to take his life. How did this happen? It was still clear that he had the advantage when he looked back on the duel. Roman was constantly being pushed back, but when Butler came back to his senses, he was the one being pushed back. There was a huge difference in their experience. Butler was a veteran swordsman in his 50s who had experienced all kinds of battles and people, but losing a war because of an opponent who was in his 20s was something he had never experienced in the world. He felt disappointed. Roman Dmitri was clearly a monster, and if he died here, the Hector Kingdom would never be able to deal with him. Even if I die, the Hector Kingdom cannot retreat. We are already pushed to the brink, and the only way to survive is to fight till the end. And this monster will still somehow appear in front of the prince and kill him too. I need to take him down with me. He decided his end. He was the captain of the Royal Knights of Hector. Butler noticed the sword falling toward his head, but he clenched his teeth and jumped ahead. It was obvious that Roman's sword would cut off his head. Nevertheless, he would take either one or both of Roman's arms in exchange. However, Butler, I will remember you. He felt goosebumps rise on his body. Roman had predicted his movements. The moment their eyes had met in the air, he concluded what the enemy had decided to do and stepped back when he saw Butler rushing toward him wildly. Swing! Butler's attack only cut through the air. However, that wasn't the case for Roman's attack. He moved like lightning and cut the chest of Butler. Quack! Quack! The scream was what marked the end of the fierce battle. Butler knelt down as his eyes lost focus, and Roman's sword, once again, headed toward his head. Just then. Stop! Rune flare! Quang! Crackle! Flames exploded from above the wall. As Roman stepped back to avoid the attack that aimed for him, he saw the gates opening and troops rushing out. Rescue Knights Captain Butler! You bastards! Do not touch our captain! The soldiers rushed in crazily. The Hector kingdom had seemingly been abandoned by God. They gave up the reputation of the Hector kingdom that was left internationally and chose to save Butler. Nevertheless, Roman Dmitri was waiting for Edwin Hector to show humanity right from the start.